I caught my wife did it with my best friend. She even had the nerve to send me Bible verses on forgiveness. In college, I met my wife. We'll call her Sue. We were both 18 years old at the time. We hit it off right away on our first date and were exchanging I love yous within weeks of dating. She kind of chased me, but I was delighted she did. We confided in one another about our darkest fears and secrets. And when her father died during her final year of college, I was there for her the whole time. Her father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and while he was in the hospital, I'd spend the nights with her so she wasn't alone. We made it through, and it was at that moment in time that our friendship was deepened. She said she didn't know what she'd done if I hadn't been there for her. She referred to me as her soulmate. I knew I was going to marry this lady, and I asked her to marry me approximately 2 years after we graduated. At the time, things couldn't have been better for me. I had married the lady of my dreams, had a well-paying job right after graduation, and both of our families adored us. My closest buddy, let's call him Dave, and I had what I believed was an unshakable sibling tie. We'd known each other since 3rd grade, and he was the brother I didn't have. He was also married and had relocated with his wife after she found a nice position at a large legal company. His wife died in a vehicle accident about a year ago, which shattered him. He later returned to our hometown, but he was never the same. I tried to be there for him, but he refused to interact with anybody. No one could comprehend the anguish he was through, so I asked my wife if she could speak to him, since she had also lost a loved one and thought Dave may be able to communicate better with someone who had gone through something similar. Yes, I realized now that this was a major error. We'd give him visits on a daily basis. Even when I wasn't there, she'd spend hours at his apartment. They were going on walks together, watching movies without asking me, eating lunch, and doing other things that couples do. This was clearly much more engagement than I had meant for them to have, and it made me uncomfortable, but Dave was doing much better as a result of it. It's vital to note that Dave and Sue had never liked one another before to all of this. This is due to Sue's opinion of his being a jerk. Dave was jumping from relationship to relationship before to marrying his wife, and even after he married his dead wife, he cheated on her on a regular basis. As a consequence, Sue disliked him and questioned how I could be friends with someone who had such poor values. This contempt for Dave was also what blinded me to what was to come. As already said, Sue and Dave grew close, to the point where she'd invite him to events I'd planned for us as a couple. Furthermore, she began to exhibit traits of what I know recognize as standard cheater behavior, constantly on her phone, becoming progressively aloof, little to no intimacy, and arriving home late. At this time, everything seemed fishy, and one day she was texting, so I questioned who she was talking to. She said it was one of her pals, and when I requested to see what they were talking, she grew agitated and accused me of being possessive. When I expressed my dissatisfaction with their relationship to Dave, he assured me that nothing was wrong and even accused me of not trusting him and my own wife. I was starting to feel gaslit. This carried on until Sue went out again one day. She stated she was going to her sister's for the weekend because she wanted some distance from me since my allegations were driving her insane. I was still dubious, so I contacted her sister to see whether she was expecting Sue to come over. She affirmed that she was, but Sue hadn't come yet. Keeping in mind that she had departed at 3 p.m. and her sister's house is around 4 hours distant from where we reside. It was now 10 o'clock. I went to my friend's home because something in the back of my mind prompted me to. My wife's automobile is indeed parked only a few steps away from my friend's home. At this time, it was obvious what was going on, and I hate to say it, but I sobbed hard. After a few moments, I decided to walk in and investigate whether this was indeed what was going on. I entered via the rear door, which I knew was open. I walked in silently, and I could hear my wife groaning. I was trembling. When I got to his bedroom door, I could see through the squeak. My wife knelt on his nightstand. That sight will never leave my mind. I'm actually weeping as I write this. When I pushed the door open, they both froze and stared at me. It took all in me not to beat the living daylights out of Dave. I just walked away into my vehicle. I could hear them scurrying and my wife yelled at me to halt so she could explain. I didn't want to see her. I'm not sure what I would have done, so I drove away. I wept the whole journey home, and they were both calling me. I went to see one of my college friends and have been here for about a week. I'm unable to eat, sleep, or think about anything else. I told my employer of the situation, and they were kind enough to provide me time off. I've been receiving phone calls from Dave and Sue, as well as our respective families. I texted my family to let them know I was okay and will be returning shortly, but I haven't answered to anybody else since. This is excruciating. That's terrible. I'm trying to stay tough, but my willpower is fraying. How could someone you cared about so much do this? I'm at a loss on what to do. How am I going to cope with this? I'm now considering hiring a divorce attorney to help me analyze my choices. My buddy suggested one he characterized as a shark. I told her everything, and she seemed really driven to help me get out of this as financially healthy as possible, given the circumstances. I still adore my wife, but I'm not sure I'll ever be able to get over this. I got a lot of messages from Dav as well, but I don't want to read them. I often alternate between sadness and wrath, and I'm at a loss for words right now. My family is well versed in everything. Sue, it seemed, admitted what she had done to everyone. I've been away from everyone for more than 2 weeks and I'm still at a loss on what to do. The agony is still palpable. When I shut my eyes, all I see is Sue and Dave together, and the agony doesn't seem to be going away. I know most of you are saying simply divorce, and I would agree, but things aren't that simple when you're the one in this predicament. Given all of this new information, I'd welcome any help, especially from those who have been here before. How did you get beyond your betrayed husbands and waywards? Is it even conceivable? Proper now, I'm pretty convinced that I'll forward with the divorce, but I just need reinforcement that I'm making the right choice. I looked over all of your comments and felt compelled to add this. She, as well as relatives and acquaintances, informed me that she had been living with her sister for the last several weeks. She mentioned in one of her letters that she had only talked to Dav once since I found out and went complete NC with him. Her mother sent me an apology for her daughter's actions. I didn't answer her phone calls. Sue, she added, is now undergoing individual counseling. In another email, she said that she would never leave me for Dav. She has emotions for him, but she is not in love with him. Dave is meant to leave shortly, but he is allegedly delaying his departure until he talks to me face to face. There's a lot more I haven't said, and I'm definitely leaving out certain specifics, but some of my family and friends think I should simply speak to her and move on. That's where I'm at right now, so I took a break from Reddit and other social media to concentrate on my marriage and the next actions I would take. I was receiving a lot of advice from the wonderful individuals on this site, as well as from family and friends. However, I wasn't sure what I really want. Since then, a lot has transpired, so this might be a novel. Please bear with me. When I looked back on the marriage, I realized it was mostly packed with joyful memories, which is why I was trying so hard to find a reason to remain. However, when I thought about her adultery, how she and Dave gaslighted me and made me doubt my sanity, all I felt was wrath. The more I looked, the more enraged I became. I'll never forget how furious Sue would become when I questioned her about where she'd been when she returned home late, or the horrible look Dave gave me when I asked him, man to man, whether he and my wife were having an affair. The adultery was awful enough, but it was made worse by the fact that it was with my closest friend. But there's the gaslighting. Gaslighting by ducking. It's something I'll never get over. True, I was played like a fool, but it takes a particular sort of person to lie so readily and so brilliantly. I'm not sure how they were able to turn the switch so quickly. I recall her telling me how much she loved me and how orny she was while she was driving home thinking about me one night when she arrived home late, maybe 2 days before I found out. Because she wasn't wearing any panties, I'm fairly positive she'd returned from Dave's. She had sex with both of us at the same time. I kissed her while dodging. I felt like a wimp in this circumstance. How could I have allowed them to all over me like that? I'm completely emasculated. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to go to Dave's, but I couldn't do it. There is no justice for me in our legal system. They get to torture me and emotionally assault me, but if I respond, I'm the one who gets locked up for who knows how long. I discussed this with my lawyer, who advised me not to do something dumb. I would not only go to prison, but I would also endanger my prospects in the divorce procedures. She advised I visit a therapist, but I'm not interested. I don't see the point. Sue's emails were continuously flooding my inbox, and they were just making me angrier. She was still spouting the same about how horrible her life would be if I didn't exist. She even had the audacity to email me forgiveness biblical texts. Why would I do that if I were so important to return to work because I needed to be occupied? Distracting myself has definitely helped me deal, and I don't drink as much as I used to. I got a letter from Sue one day at work. I was about to toss it away when I decided to read it. She discussed her individual therapy and how it helped her find some underlying difficulties with herself. The most significant of them is her poor self-esteem. She confessed that the disparity in our appearance made her extremely self-conscious, and that deep down she wanted to be desired by someone other than me. Her sister, she claims, has always been considerably attractive than her, which has led to her poor self-esteem. She said that, despite the fact that she was aware that I was drawn to her and that I made her feel attractive, she sought reinforcement from someone else. She apologized once again, saying it wasn't an excuse and that she was merely searching for a method to ensure it never happened again if I choose to give her another opportunity. She then asked if we might attempt marital therapy to help us work things out. At this time, I had yet to react to anything she or her family had given me. As a result, I just disregarded it. Anyway, I initiated the divorce process, and the first order of business was to divide our funds, which I couldn't do without her approval. We both have individual accounts, as well as a joint savings account, and I'm unable to withdraw what I'm entitled to without her. Despite the fact that I earn substantially more than she does and have contributed the most of the money in that account, I'll most likely have to share it with her 50/50. Therefore, I just filed the divorce papers. She was served a few weeks ago, and the monkey show began shortly after. She arrived at my residence with the divorce petition in her hands on the same day she was served. I'm not sure how she discovered where I was. We simply gazed at one another for what seemed like an eternity, and all the sorrow from that night returned. All of my feelings returned with fresh strength. I nearly burst into tears again, but I didn't. She seemed to be weeping as she raced towards me and attempted to embrace me. I gently pulled her away, and she burst out laughing. She began yelling, wondering why I was giving up on us so quickly, and if we couldn't simply talk it out. I assumed I simply wanted to get away from her at this point. Looking at her made me feel a variety of emotions, so I wanted to get away before I did or said something I would later regret. When I attempted to return to my vehicle, she flung herself on the hood. I asked her what she wanted, and she replied she simply wanted to speak things out, that we couldn't terminate our marriage in such a way until we cleared the air. I gave in since she was obviously not accepting no for an answer and was causing a commotion. When we arrived at my place, I just sat down and listened to what she had to say. She said once again that she would do everything to salvage our marriage, that she does not love Dave, and that she is sorry. She said that she'd done some study on how we may proceed and proposed a trial separation. During this separation, she told me that I could date anybody I wanted, but that I should postpone the divorce to allow her the opportunity to restore our friendship and eventually our marriage. She proposed a one-sided open marriage in my favor, attempted to show me examples of other couples who had survived infidelity, and even recommended that we simply relocate to a new state or even a foreign country, just the two of us. That portion saddened me a little since we had spoken about relocating and raising a family not long before all of this occurred. When she was through, we simply sat there in quiet, staring at one another. I then inquired as to why. Why is he there? Why would she cheat on me with him and then return just after I caught her? When I posed these questions, she burst into tears. She said that she felt very bad even while doing the actions, but she didn't know how to stop. That she was so engrossed in the affair that he didn't consider the implications or what she would lose. She said that the therapy helped her understand that she would have cheated on me at some time, if not with Dave, then with someone else. This was meant to be due to the same underlying concerns that were making me uncomfortable. Then it sprang out. She stated she found out she was pregnant not long after I left and had an abortion since she didn't know who the father was. She said that if it was Dave's, there would be no possibility for reconciliation, and she felt compelled to do it. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I was taken aback, and she began pleading with me not to let this be the end of our relationship. I just got numb. I requested her to go, but she pleaded with me to remain. That we still needed to chat, all of this pleading was just frustrating, especially in light of the news I had just learned. When I asked her how far along she was when she found out she was pregnant, she responded she was just a few weeks. Then it dawned on me. Wait, you said in an email that you just began having sex with Dave approximately a week before I discovered it. Did you tell the truth? She gave a nod. She nodded, hiding her head. She said that she simply said that because she didn't want to offend me with the facts and was attempting to downplay the situation. She said that it had been physical for less than a month. She attempted to comfort me, but I pushed her away. I begged her to go and not return. She attempted to say something, but I simply yelled at her to go. She asked if we could chat after I'd digested everything, and I declined. I informed her that I had accepted a job in another state and would be relocating as soon as the divorce was finalized. In our state, there is a 2-month cool-off period after you file. I had previously intended to do this and was just finishing the details before resigning from my present position. At that moment, I had already given my employer notice. When she heard this, she burst into tears and pleaded once again. I told her she had to leave or I would call the cops. She grudgingly departed, and I sat on the floor, wondering where I had gone wrong. How did my marriage reach this position in such a short time? It simply didn't make sense to me. I was already very certain about the divorce, but after speaking with her, I was more certain than ever. Sue's repeated attempts to reach me were disregarded. However, a few days ago, on Thursday, I got a phone call from my mother informing me that Sue was in the hospital. She was reportedly hospitalized for medication misuse. Everything seemed like a nightmare. I'm still not sure how to comprehend it. What is the cause of all of this? Sue seemed to be okay when I saw her at the hospital, but she had been sent to a psychiatric unit. That's where things stand right now. I have no clue why she would do this, because the last time I saw her, she was sleeping. It aches because I still adore her, and I'm simply glad she's all right now. Given what's going on right now, I haven't been thinking about divorce. How do I even begin? There are definitely a lot of essential facts I'm leaving out, but included them would make this much too lengthy. I simply need advice on what I should do next. I was hoping that my previous update would be my final post on this subject, but here I am again. It's been roughly 8 months since my life devolved into a monkey show, and things are just getting worse. I won't go into depth, but I hope I can provide enough information to elicit some constructive input from you on here. You've been considerably more useful than you realize. Sue was in a severe mental condition the last time I blogged, but she recovered after some counseling. I was heartbroken for her, but I knew I couldn't remain. I know a lot of people have gotten through this type of situation, but I know how I feel. If I remained, I'd be doing more damage than good to myself and her. I'll never get over it, and I'm sure I'll be resentful for the rest of my life. We decided to split, but she insisted on keeping in touch, even if it was little. We split approximately a month ago after a rather straightforward divorce procedure. I relocated to the West Coast to start again, and things were finally looking up for me. But then I received another phone call from Sue's sister. Sue, to cut a long tale short, had a stroke. She is virtually entirely motionless on her left side and can hardly talk. I can't even express how upsetting it was to hear, much alone how sad I felt when I went to see her. She didn't resemble the person I remembered, and she constantly cried when she saw me. One of the most difficult aspects of this is that I can't help but feel responsible for what happened to her. People tell me it isn't, but I have a feeling it is. Even though her immediate family claims it isn't my fault, I detect some resentment from them whenever I communicate with them. When her aunt spotted me, she cursed me in front of everyone, and they all became quiet. They just instructed me to leave it alone and go about my business. Even though I wish I could simply go on, knowing how everything ended out still stings. I haven't spoken to Sue since she had the stroke, and her family won't allow me visit her because, supposedly, I stress her out. I don't even know the complete story since I don't have the legal right to know. I just can't seem to get anything right.